Hello, 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 and welcome to Boss Radio Live, everyone. Again, hello, and welcome to Boss Radio Live. I am your host, NJ, and we have an exciting show for you guys today. I'm having all kind of issues today, guys, so let's just chalk it up to technical difficulty Friday, okay? But yes, so welcome to the show. I am so glad to have my guest that I have with me today, Jerry Fu. We've been trying to get together and get him on the show for a while. So I am excited that he made it and he's here, and we're talking about a very important topic. So, you guys share the episode, share the show, because it's going to be a really good one with some really great information coming right up, you guys. It's Boss Radio Live with NJ, your three-dimensional podcast. Baltimore, Maryland. I love my city. Wow. You have to have balance.
Mother's Day extravaganza event being held ILC Lois Butler Culver.
Come meet me today at the Spirit Fest. I want to hear what you have to say. Again, welcome to Boss Radio Live, where he is the boss of me. And as I said, I have an amazing guest today. We have Jerry Fu with us. He is a leadership and conflict resolution coach. I love it. And he is going to be providing us with some really great information and telling us a little bit about his journey today. So if you guys have never heard of Jerry, let me just drop a little bit of info on you about Jerry. Jerry Fu is a leadership and conflict resolution coach who has a passion for helping Asian American leaders. Prior to starting his coaching business, Jerry worked as a pharmacist and began facilitating leadership workshops in 2012. He started coaching in 2017 to help other Asian American professionals deal with the challenges they encountered at work, with their families, and within themselves. Today, Jerry offers a range of coaching services, including individual coaching, group workshops, and keynote presentations. In his free time, Jerry doesn't let grass grow under his feet. He is a traveler, a foodie, and loves salsa dancing. Jerry wants to share how you can handle those hard conversations and stay carefree. Oh, don't we need that in our life? So, everyone, welcome Jerry Fu to the show.
Hey
Hi,
everybody.
Jerry. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How about you? After that montage, man, I am fired up.
Good, because I want to have a great conversation about this because this is a really important topic, okay? And I think we definitely need to discuss it. Before we get into how we can help the people listening in,
Yeah.
first, I would love to know a little bit more about how you even got into this sort of coaching.
Yeah, it's definitely a funny journey. If you talked to me in my 20s, I'm sure I would have no idea what I was talking about, right? Someone said, "Oh, you're going to be a leadership coach." So, I don't even know what that is. So, yeah, basically the journey started in a healthcare background. Several of my family members in Taiwan, including several uncles and my grandfather, all practiced medicine as physicians. And so the expectation initially was that I would become a physician like they did. And basically, after some bad grades in college, I had to pivot somewhat into pharmacy. And so my parents were still happy with that. And they said, hey, it's okay. It's still a healthcare career and you can still have a good life with it. And that's where the agreements and commonality ended, because the stability that they wanted for me in terms of career and spouse were things that I technically wanted too, but ultimately something I didn't want on their terms. And so I took the long, windy road after I got tired of working for a chain pharmacy that my mom wanted me to work for. I said, okay, I'm going to have to strike it out on my own. And then I got fired from the job I moved to Houston for. And that was a wake-up call. And then when I dealt with bounced paychecks, filling for crooked doctors in another job, I had no idea how to confront the boss who was ripping me off, right? And so after enough career rough patches, the turning point was that when I was asked to help teach a leadership seminar through a pharmacy leadership nonprofit some of my friends run, that began to change some internal thinking in me. And I said, wow, maybe I can become a good leader. And so when I decided to take on some management challenges in pharmacy, that ultimately saved my career. That kept me finding jobs, even as several companies failed. And then at some point, I realized that I had more of a passion for people development in the same way I was developed. And so that's about when I started thinking about maybe I want to be a facilitator, maybe I want to be a coach. But when I first realized this 7 years ago, I had no idea how to start a business, build a business, get one off the ground. And so it remained a distant hobby, occasional hobby. And then it wasn't until the pandemic hit, when I was in the middle of my coach training, where I said, okay, how much longer am I going to put this dream off? And so, yeah, in the heart of the pandemic, decided to officially start my company. And yeah, so that's a little bit, hopefully shows, hey, how did he even get into this? How did this become an idea for him? And it's basically the key turning point is that my biggest hang up and obstacle to becoming a more effective leader was being willing to initiate difficult conversations or engage them. And so that's why I focus on conflict resolution, not because I chose it, but in a way it chose me. So yeah, I know what kind of help I wish I'd had in the middle of those leadership challenges. And so, yeah, I wanted to turn around and help leaders in the same positions.
Yes, I definitely understand that, because, difficult people are all around, and sometimes they're in the mirror, right? so,
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be us, but knowing how to deal with conflict is definitely important.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I want to ask this question because I see some workplaces that are actually moving towards bringing in conflict resolution people to kind of, teach this sort of thing right in the workplace. So is that something that you have found yourself doing as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's it's a two-pronged approach, right? The first is to be able to work yourself out of a job. Ideally, you give them enough tools and techniques and other best practices so that they don't have to rely on you, all the time. On the flip side, there are times when people may come to the end of themselves and they said, hey, things got really ugly and petty, and we need a third party who's neutral, that's not emotionally invested in the situation, in order to help kind of arbitrate things and help smooth things over and find a solution that's not tied to either side. So yeah, it's absolutely the case, because yeah, on one hand, you want people to be able to handle their problems internally. On the other hand, yeah, there's always going to be a need for a sounding board, just because sometimes, yeah, and it's okay if people can't find a resolution on their own. That's the blessing, is that you come to the end of yourself, right? And you just say, hey, you know what? I'm humble enough to realize, okay, maybe we need some help here, because as much as we want to handle this on our own, it's okay. Just be honest that, hey, you know what, this isn't our strongest point. So let's look to other people that may have solved a similar problem.
Yeah, that's actually a very important point, because you kind of have to get the pride out of the way in order to solve the conflict, right? So you talked about, leadership and conflict resolution, but I guess how are you really tying those together, or how do you see that they fit with one another?
Yeah. Let's talk about, where does this even overlap, right? So let's give an example. I had a client who he is having trouble just trying to confront one of his direct reports, right? And he's like, hey, my direct report is not pulling his weight. He keeps showing up late. And when he does show up, he's spending another 15, 20 minutes just lollygagging, getting coffee, cutting up with the teammates that are resentful of him for showing up late, and now serving as a distraction to the work they could be doing, right? And so this client asked me, he's like, hey, how do I deal with this direct report who's clearly not pulling his weight? So we'll call the leader Jim, and we'll call his direct report Mike. So, Jim's like, how do I get Mike to understand that maybe he needs to pull his weight? Because if I just go up to him and say, hey, Mike, you're not pulling your weight, you got to step it up, he's probably just going to say, well, if you're not happy with the job I'm doing, then just do it yourself, right? Just, very childish things like that, right? So Jim and I kind of talk through this process that I walk my clients through, a 5-step process. The first is to imagine what a successful conversation sounds like. And I said, Jim, do you believe success is possible? Like, a conversation can go well. Maybe just ask him nicely, hey, Mike, would you mind showing up on time? Like, don't just say on time, say like 9:00 sharp, in order to, and do that. Okay, maybe it could be. Is it likely or realistic? Probably not. But is it possible? Yeah, I think, if we ask nicely, or we show him the benefits of what it means to pull his weight, show up on time, and get focused fit more quickly, maybe that could go well. Okay. So now that we had an idea that maybe this could go well, okay, let's go to step 2, which is to find 10 seconds of courage to actually initiate the conversation, right? Because what do people-pleasing people like to do? Like, I'm a recovering people pleaser, right? I'm just like, oh, well, I'm just trying to be friends with this guy. I don't want him not being upset with me. But all that underlying resentment is just going to boil over at some point into something less constructive. So what we like to say is to say, hey, can you find 10 seconds of courage to initiate that conversation, pick up that phone, send that email, send that text, so that you can set the boulder in motion and lock the gate behind you, so you can't backtrack, you can't procrastinate, you can't rationalize, which we know feel good, but ultimately don't do anything for you. So Jim sets up this conversation with Mike. He's like, hey, Mike, do you have time on your calendar to discuss our work relationship tomorrow morning? Great. Okay. So third, now that this is on the calendar, Jim knows he needs to have some specific strategy. So the third step is to script your critical phrases or your moves. And we say, okay, what are the top 3 things that I need to discuss with Mike, right? Don't just let it rattle around in your head, because if you try to think of things in the moment, you're probably going to forget. So let's get our thoughts organized on paper. So now that you have your 3 things to mention, whether it's punctuality or focus or productivity, what kind of pushback do you expect him to give you when you address each of these 3 things? Said, okay, well, he's likely just going to lock up, or he's going to insist that it's not that big a problem, or he's just going to ask for exceptions for his life circumstances. And they said, okay, Jim, well, then how are you going to counter these counters, right? So again, we kind of get back to, hey, affirm his identity as a good worker. Well, what does a good worker do? Well, yeah, he shows up on time, and he stays focused, and he works hard. It's like, okay, what kind of evidence do you have for that? So we start to get specifics to the script. We don't need to list every case scenario, but just the most likely that he needs to do. Step 4 then is to rehearse these moves, right? You don't just do homework and pass a test when it comes to conflict resolution. You have to get your repetitions in before the actual game, right? You want to iron out your phrasing so you don't trip over your words in the moment. So maybe you practice in front of a mirror. Maybe you role play with a friend. make sure you get that muscle memory in. And then step 5, do it and follow through, right? You didn't do all this homework just to say, you know what, this feels like enough. Because at the end of the day, as much as we want to indulge in the fear that, oh, well, it just makes things worse. Like now he's, now things aren't any better. It's like, well, you realize that you'd rather try and fail than not try at all. Because now that you failed, you can say, well, how would I change my approach? If Mike gets mad at me, how will Jim, in his eyes, like, try again? Say, hey, you know what, Mike, sorry if that didn't land well. Can we start over? Can show me what I can do differently to show you that that things are broken between us, and I'm just trying to make it better, right? To have that humility and to just study it impartially and just say, hey, you know what? Well, how would I tweak my approach? And so once you walk through these 5 steps, it usually gives you a higher chance of success than you did previously.
Wow, that was really good. Like I'm gonna have to listen. I'm gonna have to listen to the replay just to make sure I have those 5 steps down. That was really, really great. And the things that were kind of jumping out at me while you were talking is the piece about being prepared, not just kind of, because I think one of the bad things that happens when we're dealing with conflict is we kind of go in guns blazing while we're kind of a little upset, or we see something, we're angry or whatever, and it's just not going to go well. So the being prepared part, that really, spoke to me.
Good.
I'm taking that in.
Good, absolutely.
Like, take a breath, imagine, what you might want to say, and then even script it out. Like, I never even thought to do that. And that's an amazing piece of advice. And I think our listening audience is also agreeing with that, right?
Good. Yeah, I'm glad.
So yes, this is great advice. Just to do that. And also, yeah, it definitely takes courage, because I am still, trying to get out of being a people pleaser. So I'm still
join the club. I'm still there.
So it's hard. It can be very hard, especially with family.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I just said this, right? So tell us some of the mistakes that people make when they are trying to, other than the one I mentioned, which is going in guns blazing, right? Some other mistakes that people make when they're having conflict.
Yeah. Much like to your point about not doing homework, right? The first thing that people forget is that they like to tell themselves a story that makes sense to them. Right. And it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just part of being human, because part of your brain just wants to fill in gaps that, you don't have the story for. Right. Like, we'll give another example. So let's say you and a friend agreed to, watch a movie together at a theater, and you show up and your friend doesn't show up. And, you try calling a couple times, it goes to voicemail. There's nothing there. Right. And now you're mad at your friend because in your mind, you're just like, my friend made this promise. And, they know that I'm punctual, and they know I expect other people to be punctual. And, I just already bought my ticket. So now I'm out time and, money. And now I feel disrespected because, this promise was not honored. Right. So the first mistake is not verifying that story. Right. Because we have the story in our head, and we, like you said, we go in guns blazing and we say, hey, we agreed on this movie. I called you several times. You didn't pick up. Like, clearly I'm hurt. And that's okay to say that you're hurt. But if you don't verify the reason as to why your friend actually couldn't make the appointment, now you're setting yourself up for an apology, most likely. Right. And so, maybe your friend says, hey, a family emergency came up. My uncle was rushed to the hospital. My cell phone died. And, like, who knew? Like, unless you actually asked about it. So the first mistake is like not verifying the story that you're telling yourself. The second mistake is interrupting, right? So let's say in this conversation, you say, okay, I want to hear your side of things, right? Maybe you get to that point. Hey, we clearly I'd like to hear what exactly happened. And then, right? Let's say your friend starts telling you this very unfortunate story of these very circumstances, but you're not listening to hear the whole evidence. You're only listening until you can grab something to respond, and then you interrupt your friend, right? And you say, well, you still could have like recharged your battery. You still could have, let me know as soon as you heard, like, and instead of giving your friend the chance to explain it in full and listening and showing, hey, you know what, let me have empathy for my friend, right? Instead of saying, no, like you were supposed to confine to my schedule. And so listening to respond instead of listening to listen is the second big mistake, right? Where they say, oh, you now your friend feels disrespected because it shows you're not paying attention. So that's another common one. A third is conflict resolution for compliance and not collaboration, right? And let me elaborate on that for a second. So let's take this thing. And here's two approaches. So let's go with, let's do the compliance first. Hey man, like I understand that was an unfortunate circumstance and I'm sorry your uncle is in bad shape right now. I'm happy that you were able to tend to him. But I'm going to need you to be more proactive when it comes to, telling me that you can't make an appointment because otherwise I'm just going to be mad at you like this again, right? Like this is the solution I need you to honor, and therefore, like if you do that, like we'll be fine. Like how does that feel, right? People are just like, ugh, like okay, I know he's right, and as opposed to, hey man, yeah, sorry to hear that. Thank you for telling me that, that. This anyone would understand, in your situation. So you tell me, next time this happens, what do you suggest we do? Like, here's what I would suggest. What do you suggest, right? Because now you're going from opposite sides of the table, and now you're going to the same side of the table because you realize you agree on the problem. The problem is the problem, not the person, right? So yeah, to kind of flip it on you, just to say, hey, yeah, the third mistake, and here's how to correct those. So I'd say those are three of the most common mistakes that people make when it comes to conflict resolution, aside from the one you mentioned.
Oh God, that was so. Look again. Yes, I'm replaying this whole show
Sure. Yeah.
and taking notes. That's so good because yeah, I'm so guilty. I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. I feel bad. I may need to call a couple of people and apologize. But yeah, this is definitely something we struggle with, and I've seen it, and literally that example has almost been me. So I know I'm not the only one who's going, oh my gosh, he is spot on. So yeah, so when we are dealing with all of these situations, and what I love is how we transition from like workplace and all of that to talking about friends and friends and family, whatever, dealing with that. So I think that is amazing as well because everything that you're saying, it's not just for the workplace or whatever. It's like our whole lives can be made better with this. So I think it's great. But if we were going to go back to talking about maybe being in the workplace, maybe being the boss,
Mm-hmm.
if definitely for people who own their own company,
Mm-hmm.
um, you talk on your site about three powerful questions that you can use as a leader. So what
Mm.
tell us what what that is.
Show us your toolbox, Jerry. Absolutely, because we are generous with our sharing. So, one simple question is, what's the real challenge here for you? This is from a book called The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stanier. He has 7 questions that he says, hey, this will help any leader with their approach to avoid burnout, grow their people. And part of this, in terms of helping your people get stronger mentally and with their capabilities, is to get them to process through powerful questions. So let's elaborate on this one. So let's say, Jim comes to me with the situation. Oh, yeah, Mike's just not pulling his weight, all this other stuff. Well, Jim, so you tell me, what's the real challenge here for you? And Jim's like, well, I think it's just trying to actually get him to like verbalize my reasoning so that he understands why taking my recommendations would actually be beneficial for him, right? So then you get the person to go past the surface level problem that they come to you with, and that actually helps you identify the root issue that you actually need to get to. Because if you treat the symptom and not the underlying cause, right, putting a Band-Aid on an axe, no one would take that seriously, right? You have to dig deeper. So that's one powerful question I love. The second question I like to use is, well, what are you learning right now, right? So, we asked Jim, hey, well, yes, this is not easy. So what are you learning? And he's like, oh, well, I can't just state my expectations and hope that he meets them, or I can't trust that he's going to figure out what I really mean when I say something. So I need to spell things out more explicitly, right? And so now Jim's like, wow, this situation sucks. And yet now you're shining a light on, well, what's valuable in this, right? What are you taking away from this that you realize that you need to change, right? And so that leads to the third question, is to ask someone, well, what is your next action? And so I love this question. It's taken from David Allen's Getting Things Done, because when you ask someone, well, what is your next action? You have to be forward thinking. You have to be action oriented, because you have to do something and not just think about it. Because when you move forward and this forward action and this moving you forward, then that's usually how you generate momentum, right? It's a great way to undercut complaining, venting, or the victim mentality, when people just say, oh, well, this is unfair and that's unfair and this shouldn't happen. And you just say, well, okay, well, yeah, I'm not taking away from that, but what is your next action, right? And so you're just like, hey, here's where I need you to focus, right? So those are three of my favorite questions to ask, whether I'm in a coaching session or I'm just asking my leadership team, right, or my team that I'm supervising. Hey, well, what's our next action, guys?
Wow. I love question number 3, because I think that is always the ticket, right? To be moving forward, no matter what's happening, you want to move forward. So that's a great one. Also, the other thing that you mentioned about being clear. So I had and this is an interview with you, so I don't want to get into a long story.
Okay. That's your podcast. I'm here for you today.
I had a class that I was doing, and they did a very interesting exercise, and that they were saying, okay, so everybody jot down, what you mean by, and they were saying basically these colloquialisms that we use, like, oh, I need that ASAP, or soon, or, things like that. And so everybody's jotting down, what they believe that means. And then they asked us to read it all, and we all had different like everybody had different timelines, different thoughts. And so it was just very eye-opening, because they said, yes, this is what happens when we're talking to people. We think that they understand it as we do, but they don't. They understand it as they do. Good. And so in order for us to bridge that gap, we need to stop, using those kind of statements, number one, and being very clear, like being very clear and stating what we need, when we need it. If we need it a certain way, we need to say that. We need to actually ask them, do you feel like you have any problem with that? Or do you understand it? Or like, it was all of these thoughts that I had never thought of. But they were talking about the fact that this causes a lot of conflict, especially in the workplace, but even like at home, because we just are all understanding different things, although we heard the same words, right? So I just, that when you said that, it made me think about that, about how we need to be very clear, and we can still be empathetic.
Yeah.
In our approach, but very clear. So thank you for that. That's wow. Okay.
Certainly.
This has been great. This is great. Okay. So, that has all been a lot of nuggets that you dropped for my listening audience. So I hope
Yeah.
they appreciated that. But I did want to talk about, because I mentioned it in I mentioned a couple of things in the
Mhm.
intro. Number
Yeah.
one, I wanted to talk about the guide that you have,
Yeah.
because maybe that would be helpful for people, right?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to elaborate more. So yeah, that guide, number one, it's free. So it
We
doesn't
love
cost you
free.
anything. Yeah. So it actually goes into more detail on the 5-step framework that I went through with that case study early in our conversation. So if you found the 5 steps helpful and you want to really dig a little deeper with it, there is a case study in that guide. So it's not just list as 5 steps and ta-da. It's like, no, there's a story and some other case studies that you can study just to say, okay, how does this resonate with me, and how do I want to apply it to the situation that I'm dealing with in my own life? And so that was put together with the help of some story brand marketers, for those of you who know Donald Miller. So just a quick side note to entrepreneurs: if you're looking for ways to get more traffic to your website, a lead magnet is a great way to build that. And so this is that thing, just to pull back the curtain a little bit. So it's just as a token of generosity. It's also helped to build relationships, because obviously I'm going to capture emails through it, and send you some other interesting emails with useful content. And if you like it, great. See where that leads to. But so the guide, I love the feedback I've gotten from it when people have downloaded it, just to say, hey, I want to apply these steps to my life and my situations, and give myself a better chance, so I'm not resentful all the time. So that's the guide.
Yes. And if you guys want that guide, there's the website for you guys to go to. And that free, you heard it here, guys. Free guide is available, that you can go through those 5 steps. So I would go there right away. As a matter of fact, I am going there right away.
Beautiful. Thank you for supporting it. I hope it yields dividends. Absolutely.
Definitely going there. And also, you guys can check the website out if you want to work with Jerry. All right. Yes. And then we talked about this salsa dancing. So I love it. Tell me about that.
Sure. Yeah, it's quite the journey. And I just to zoom out for a second, right? I hope everyone understands, like, both my journey as a conflict resolution, you could call it, I don't want to say an expert, more experienced person, and same thing with dancing. It was all on this growth mindset idea, where conflict resolution is a skill that you can improve at with enough work and time and effort. Same thing with dancing. It is something that you can get better with time and effort, because too often, and early on in my life, I had a very fixed mindset where I just said, okay, well, some people are good at difficult conversations and I must not be, because I tried a couple of times, I didn't have it. So let me just avoid it, because I'm clearly not good at it. Same thing with dancing. When I first learned about salsa dancing my freshman year in college, the first part was that apparently the lesson was actually really terrible. And I look back at it now, I'm just like, that was a terrible lesson. But if you don't know it's terrible, you think it's you. You're like, oh, I must be terrible at this. I just turned it on me, and I just said, oh, it's not the instructors. I just clearly can't do this. And so you just hate feeling incompetent. So you just let me just shelve this forever. And then it wasn't until midway through pharmacy school where some friends of mine said, hey, you know what? Give it another shot. It's worth the effort. And so now, I was at a point where I was tired of studying. And so I was like, okay, I can spend a little more money and go get out some more and take a break from all the school. So I actually got to a point where, 6-8 months into it, I was like, you know what, I'm actually starting to get the hang of this, and I'm actually starting to really like it. And then once I graduated, I moved to a city that didn't have any salsa dancing. So I just got rusty, and then I lacked confidence, but I missed it. So it's just like this really unproductive cycle. And then even after I moved back to Houston, most of the friends I initially met when I moved back to Houston were into country dancing or two-stepping. And so salsa was kind of like this dormant skill that just kind of sat for a while. And then about 9 years ago now, wow, my time just flies. 9 years ago, a friend introduced me to a free salsa dancing event in downtown Houston. And I tell you, NJ, I just saw there was one skilled, pretty blonde. And I said, I got to dance with her. And I brought my A game, and I was just locked in. And I get through the dance. She gives me a hug, and I just thought to myself, why did I stay away from this for so long? Like, I was my biggest obstacle was me. It wasn't the rejection. It wasn't all these things. It was just my own perception that I wasn't that great a dancer. And then when you lay it all on the table and you realize where you are on the spectrum, I got random compliments. Like when we left, like this one guy was like, "Hey man, you got some moves. Like, where'd you learn all that?" And I'm like, "Years of struggle and failure." Or like, where else would you learn them? And
like
so
everything else.
Yeah, right. So from that day on, I just said, "All right, I'm back." And yeah, it's just been a very involved hobby ever since. It's really blossomed into something beautiful, not just for me, but for other people, because it's a great community to be a part of. Everyone's active and creative and musical, but also like I help out as a volunteer instructor locally for a student club. And so it's just sharing the joy of dancing with them is fun. And then we've even hosted charitable events around dance lessons to raise money and awareness for nonprofits or missionaries or other groups that we want to highlight. And so it's just this really great generosity model where, a group gets, publicity, people get quality dance lesson, and we just get to, engage in loving what we do. So yeah, that's the journey. And it continues to yield dividends over and over again. So happy to share that.
Well, I love how you liken that to your same thing, fear of, getting into conflict resolution. You overcame, overcame both of those. So I love it. And for you guys who are like, salsa dancing, Jerry, there he is, you guys, looking great. This isn't even a video, and it looks like you have some moves. Oh, this is wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. I love it. Jerry, thank you so much. The 30 minutes always goes so very fast, but thank you for coming on today and sharing with my guests. It's been really, really great. Thank you so much. And it looks like people are in awe of your salsa dancing.
Okay. Sure, guys.
Very good. Very good. All right. Thank you so much, Jerry. It's been great. You guys, don't forget, if you want to get that guide, definitely go to the website and pick that up and look at those 5 amazing steps that Jerry shared with us today. Again, Jerry, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, NJ. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Well, guys, that's another great show. It was a good one, and conflict resolution is a great topic to talk about. So if you guys are experiencing that and you want to go get that guide, I definitely suggest that you do. I'm going to head over and get mine and make sure I have those 5 steps down to make my life more carefree as well. Thank you guys for joining me. And until the next time, I will see you guys. Until then, you guys know I'm here every second and fourth Friday. So come and check me out. And I'll see you guys then. But until then, you guys stay boss.